Hello, this is Brad. I am one of your consumer technology specialists here at Mid-Continent Public Library, and welcome back to our Windows Widgets series. Today, we are looking at Paint 3D. This app was meant to be a refresh of the classic Paint application, which we looked at in another Windows Widget video, so be sure to check that out. The Paint 3D application has some new tools and some new features not available in the original Paint app that allow us to create different kinds of projects and also explore the realm of 3D images. So today we're going to look at all the tools and features that we have within this app. Let's get started. I'm going to navigate to my Start menu in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. And I could scroll through this alphabetical menu if I wanted to, or I can simply click on a letter and it will bring up this alphabetical menu for me. And from there, I can select the letter P. And then I will see all the apps that start with the letter P at the start of my menu, and Paint 3D is the very first one. I could also alternatively search for it in my search bar. Just type in Paint 3D, and there it is. I'm going to select New, which will allow us to open a new project. And here we see our canvas within Paint 3D. If I click the Canvas button in the top of my toolbar, I can actually modify my canvas in some various ways. I can click and drag the sides to change the shape of it. Maybe I wanted more of the smaller square shape. I can also use the width and height areas over here to put in exact measurements. I can rotate and flip my canvas as well. And I can even turn my canvas off. This will come into play when we start creating those 3D images. I can also do a transparent canvas if that suits my needs better too. For now, I'm going to leave my canvas visible so that I can show you all these tools. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the brushes that we have available in Paint 3D. The first one we are going to look at is just the marker. That's the first one here. I have this indigo color selected down here, and I can just mark on my canvas with that marker. I can also adjust the thickness by sliding this bar right here. There we see that thicker marker. I'm going to make it even thicker by sliding it further to the right-hand side. We can also adjust the opacity of our marker too. If I slide this to the left, my marker will become fainter. And it is not only a lighter color, but it actually interacts with my more opaque marker lines that I have here. And I will further demonstrate this by making the opacity even less, and we can just see how that kind of interacts with those different lines of varying opacity. If we want to clear some of the marks we've made on our canvas, we have a great eraser tool that we can use. I can also adjust the thickness of my eraser, which can be great for erasing my entire canvas very quickly. We have some other tools available to us. Let's take a look at the calligraphy pen. And I can modify my color by selecting any of the colors I have down here. Just like with my marker, I can adjust the thickness and opacity of this tool using my sliders over here. That is not the case for all of our tools, however. If we look at our oil brush, we see that we do not have a slider for opacity. If I want to modify my color, if none of these colors are quite what I need, I can select my color here, and this will bring up this menu here, and I can use this slider to slide across the color spectrum. And I can also fine-tune the darkness or lightness by dragging this around in my box up here. And I press OK when I have a color that I want. And this oil brush just gives a really neat textured line. Another way that I can remove unwanted marks is by using the Undo button. There is also a watercolor paintbrush, a pencil, and a crayon brush that we can use within Paint 3D. Next, we are going to look at 2D lines and shapes. We are going to start out by just making a straight line. And I have options to modify this. The little white dots at either end allow me to click and drag to modify either the angle or the length of my line. I could also do some of that with the sides of my selection box here. And once I click this check mark or click outside of that box, my line is now part of my canvas. I cannot modify it. I can click and drag to select the line, but I am not going to be able to modify it in quite the same way. We have other lines available over here. Let's take a look at this 3-point line. And this just gives me a third point I can use to modify my line. I have the 2 dots at the end, and I have one in the middle as well, that just allow me to manipulate this line. I can adjust the thickness of my line using this slider over here. I can also change my color. And just like with some of my brushes, I can change the opacity of my line as well. Let's take a look at some shapes now. I'm going to start with this circle shape. I just click and drag to draw that circle. I can change the thickness of the line using the slider over here. I can also change the fill of my shape. Currently there is no fill selected, but I can go to this drop down and change it to a solid fill. And I can modify my fill color as well. And once I click that check mark or click outside the box, the shape is now adhered to my canvas. Let's draw another shape. Here is a square. And I can rotate this using this command button. I can also rotate and flip using the buttons over here on this control pane. There is also a new stamp button that you can use in Paint 3D. It's over on the left-hand side of my square, and if I press it, it creates a copy of the shape that I have that I then can move and manipulate around my canvas. This could be a great time saver so that I do not have to try to recreate a shape that I have already made. I am going to clear my canvas by clicking and dragging to select the whole canvas and then pressing delete on my keyboard. There are all kinds of shapes available over on the right-hand side: triangles, arrows, stars, all sorts of fun shapes. The next thing I am going to show you are the stickers that we have available. And these are pre-made little shapes and graphics that you can use to paste on your canvas. Just like with other shapes, I can use the stamp button to copy and paste that sticker. Stickers are a great new addition to Paint 3D. Next, we are going to look at the aspect of Paint 3D which gives it its name, and that is the 3D shapes. First, we will look at a cube, and I click and drag to draw my shape. And this may look like a regular square, but if I use these various command buttons, I can actually rotate this to see that it is a 3D cube. Besides just moving my shape around, I can actually control how close or far away it is from my canvas. And I do that by using this button over on the left-hand side. There we see I can move it farther away, or I can even move it behind or into my canvas. If I select this 3D view button at the very top, it will look like my cube is just stuck in my canvas. There's another way to go to our canvas options, and that's by pressing the three dots and then selecting canvas options. And here I'm going to show you how those various canvas tools can come in handy. Here we see the transparent canvas. And I can just turn my canvas off. This just allows me to kind of move my shape all over and not be limited by that canvas space. I've got some other things to show you, so I'm going to turn my canvas back on. I'm going to move my shape further out from the canvas now and show you some other ways that we can manipulate these shapes. So we've seen the rotate features. We can rotate it this way and that way. We can also change the size of our shape as well. If I click and drag the side, I can make my cube bigger. I can also make it thinner. I can make it taller. You can really modify these 3D shapes to no end. Besides shapes, we have some fun 3D doodle effects we can use. Here is the tube brush. I can change my color. I can change the shape of my tube. Let's go with this diamond shape. And I can just click and drag to draw. And then once I release, I will have all these little points which I can use to modify the doodle that I just made. And once I click this check mark, I can look at my 3D doodle that I made. Just like with my cube, I can rotate this to see all the different angles of it. I can also modify its size as well. Another 3D tool that we have is the soft edge tool, and this is a little different. Instead of having a shape right away, I have a little dotted line, and I can draw whatever shape I want, and once I connect the line back to that little circle, it will generate my shape. And since it's a soft edge, everything's going to kind of have a pillowy, soft edge to it. I can modify the size. I can modify its relation to the canvas, just like with my other shape and my other doodle. There are just a lot of fun 3D options available in Paint 3D. These are some of the ones you can create, but there are also some fun 3D models that are available as well. Let's take a look at this one. It's a person here. And I can rotate and manipulate that just as I did my shape and my doodles. We also have a dog and a fish and a cat that we can add from our 3D models over here. We can make our own fun shapes as well. Let's try to make a coffee mug using the various shapes and tools we have available to us. I am going to select the tube shape from our 3D Objects menu and just draw that out into a mug-like shape. There we go. That looks pretty good. And now we need a handle for our mug. I'm actually going to draw a handle using the Sharp Edge Doodle tool, which is very similar to the Soft Edge tool. I get my dotted line while I am drawing, and once I connect my dotted line back to that circle, it will generate my shape for me. Okay, there we see my mug handle. And if I wanted to make it a little bit thinner, I could use my points on the side to make that a little bit thinner. And now I will show you how we can actually connect these two shapes. I'm first going to put the handle into the position that I want it. And now I'm going to click and drag to select both the handle and the mug. And then I'm going to select the group button over here. And that will now make this one solid piece. Both the handle and the mug move around together. If I needed to modify these separately again, I can just click and drag to select my shape, and then select Ungroup, and then I can move the separate parts of my mug again. I am going to reattach the handle to the mug because I want to show you some other ways we can modify 3D shapes. So I'm going to click to select both, press Group, and now we have a solid mug again. I am going to navigate back to my brushes to show you that we can use those to draw upon our three-dimensional shapes. I've got my marker tool selected, and I can draw all over my mug. And the brush responds to all of the curves and the angles of our three-dimensional shapes. I can use this free rotation handle to rotate my mug so I can draw on all sides of that three-dimensional shape to make sure that it's fully covered. I think it's really neat how these brushes interact with the 3D shapes. And we can really see that these three-dimensional shapes have a whole nother realm outside of our two-dimensional shapes. I'm actually going to show you how you can put two-dimensional shapes onto your three-dimensional shape here. Here we have a circle selected. I'm going to change the color of my line. Let's make this blue, and also my fill, just to make it a little more fun and colorful. And now I'm going to use my stamp button to paste these circles all over my mug. And just like with the brushes, these shapes react to the curves and the contours of my three-dimensional shapes. I can use my eraser to erase any of the two-dimensional shapes and brush marks that I've made. See, it will not erase my mug, but I can erase any of those markings that I have made with the brushes and the two-dimensional shapes. Let's take a look at our stickers once again and see how they interact with 3D shapes. And we see that just like with the circle and the marker, it adheres to our 3D image, and it responds to the different curves of that shape. These are just another fun element that we can apply to our 3D shapes. Besides these stickers, there are some fun texture stickers that we can apply to our shapes. The textures are this middle button right here, and I'm going to take a look at the bark texture that we have available. Just like with our other stickers, I click and drag, and I am going to make this larger so that it covers my entire 3D image. We can see that it responds to the curves of our shape just like everything else that is two-dimensional. And there we have a little tree stump mug. And these are all the various ways that we can decorate and modify our 3D shapes. Just like with the two-dimensional shapes and the marker, these textures and stickers do react with our eraser. We can easily erase those. And now I'm going to show you the 3D library that we have available. And this has a bunch of pre-made three-dimensional images that you can look at and modify. Let's take a look at this sunflower, for example. And these 3D images from the library, we can move and modify them just like we have any other 3D shape that we have seen so far. I now want to show you the text features we have available. I can click and drag to have a text box appear, and then I can type in that. I can modify my text however I want to, as long as I don't close out of this window. I can change the font style. I can also change the font size. I can modify the font color. I could also make it bold, italicized, or underlined. But as soon as I click out of that, that text is adhered to my canvas. I can no longer manipulate it. There we see it is part of that canvas. However, if I use three-dimensional text, I can click and drag, and just like with the regular text, I can type in this box. I can modify my text in all those various ways, changing the font style, the size, the color. But now when I click out of that box, my 3D text has a different look to it. I can also rotate it. There we see that this is definitely three-dimensional text. I can move it all these various ways. And I can see that it is off of my canvas, and I can move it farther or closer. I can make it larger with that as well. I can even stretch out my text to make the letters very long, like we see here. And this is just allowing you to see the difference between using the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional text, and how we can use the three-dimensional text just to make some fun visual effects. Speaking of effects, that is the last thing that I am going to show you. Up in the top of our toolbar, we see the Effects button. And this allows us to modify our canvas and our workspace to have some different coloration. This could help us depending on what kind of project we are doing. Here we see this really dark blue effect. Depending on what kind of scene we are trying to create, this could come in handy. Maybe I find this to be a little too dark, so I might want to go ahead and choose a lighter effect. Now, if you wanted to save any of these 3D projects you had worked on, you could navigate to your menu button, then go to Save As. And if you just want to come back to this project in Paint 3D, you would select Paint 3D Project. You could save it as an image, which would just save it as a JPEG or another image file. You could also select video to keep some of those 3D elements visible. If I go ahead and select video, it will usually add a little animation. This one is turntable, so it's turning my 3D image around. Here's swing. And we could see how removing that canvas could probably really help this effect a little bit. Here is jump and turn. And if I press save, this would allow me to save this as an MP4 video. I am actually going to press cancel and show you one more very handy tool within Paint 3D. So for the first time today, we are going to insert a picture into Paint 3D. To do that, we're going to our menu and then select Insert. From there, I will select the picture that I want to bring into Paint 3D. Now it rests upon my canvas. I can use my markers. I can mark all over this picture if I want to. If I select 3D view, we can tell that it is a two-dimensional image that is on our canvas. And now I will show you the Magic Select tool. And let's say I wanted to remove my astronaut from this photo. I can draw my little box around him. Then I will press Next. If the tool did a good job and got all of the outlines of my astronaut, I will press Done. And then I can actually remove him from that photo if I want to. I can move him all around, or I can completely get rid of him from my photo. This is just a really great, quick little trick you can use to modify photos in Paint 3D. And those are all of the things that we are going to look at today in Paint 3D. We looked at brushes and the two-dimensional shapes and stickers, and then how those tools interact with our new 3D images. We also looked at ways we can modify our canvas. And then finally, I showed you the Magic Select tool, which allows you to modify your photos within Paint 3D. I do hope you take the time to explore this application and see all of the fun things that you can create. Thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to follow our MCPL 360 Facebook page. We premiere new videos every Wednesday and Friday at 1 p.m. And if you miss the premiere on Facebook, you can always watch it on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our MCPL Mo YouTube channel and follow our Consumer Technology Resource playlist. Thank you very much. Have a great day.